How's going guys, welcome to the channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the golden protector and got harem? Part 1. Huge shout out to Bratja Rasa for this story. If you wants to see awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to subscribe. Now let's get into the video. Ria's Gremory was in a pinch. She and her peerage were fighting tooth and nail in their first raiding game against Riser Phoenix and had whittled his forces down to just him and his queen against herself and her pawn Issei Hayato, the current Red Dragon Emperor, who was in the middle of getting the shit kicked out of him by Riser. Hum on Rias. Riser taunted as he punched Issei again. Forfeit the match or else this pawn will die. Don't do it Rias. Issei stated as he shakily stood up again. I can still fight. Issei gasped when he felt something hit his stomach and heard a splash of blood. Riser's hand was going through the teen's torso, his fist of flame burning Issei's body from the inside as well as the outside before he extinguished the flames as he pulled his fist out, causing Issei to twitch as he fell, going into shock. Now forfeit. Riser shouted as Issei started to disappear to be taken out and healed. Rias was in silent shock as she mentally repeated what she saw in her head. Forfeit right now Rias. Riser shouted again as he stepped on Issei's body before it fully vanished. Ria's emotions were frantic. Anger, sadness, murder, blood, kill. 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 Ria's seafoam blue eyes became crimson red and her pupil slits as power swelled from her body, a dark crimson and black power shot upward and hit the barrier surrounding the false school. The bestial roar came from Ria's as the power took receded into body, well what was her body? What stood before Riser was a monster. Announcer's booth. Surziches looked at the screen in disbelief next to his fellow Satans and wife Graphia. No funking way. Falbium shouted. How can your sister have chakra, let alone that humans? I don't know how, but this is very bad. Seraphol stated, turning to the people at the control station. Pull back everyone besides Rias, if she is alone, she won't attack anyone. Okay. One of the people said as they tried to retrieve Riser and Ubeluna, but nothing happened. What's going on? Seraphol demanded frantically. It's not working, it's like that power is negating our commands. The person said. Polskuo Academy. It looked like Ria's body shape, but what looked like power odd destruction was covering her body, including her long crimson hair and face. She had white circles for eyes and a jack-o'-lantern mouth. What made her look like a beast were the four tails and fox-like ears on her head. What is this? Riser thought before he signaled Ubeluna to attack Rias. Said queen was going to attack, but was stopped when Rias appeared in front of her and sank her teeth into the woman's arm. Ubeluna screamed and was grabbed by her throat before Rias let her arm go. What the hell are you? Ubeluna screamed before she was thrown in the air only to be sent flying into the wall. Riser watched as Rias decimated his queen before her attention turned to him. Rias growled before roaring again as she ran at him. Riser took flight and Rias jumped above him and flipped, making her tail send him to the ground. Riser grunted in pain but cried out in more pain when he felt Rias stomp on his stomach repeatedly like he was a trampoline and then off of him. This was a short reprieve before she started punching his face, flames bursting to life to repair the damage, but not fast enough with Ria's fast and swift blows to Riser's head. Oof. She is going to kill him Lord Lucifer. One person shouted at the Satan as they scanned Riser's life signs to show he wasn't good at all. Send someone in to stop her now or else he will die. Surziches grimaced but stood straight as he made up his mind. I'm going in. He stated as he started to activate his magic when Graphia stopped him. Wait Lord Lucifer. She stated as she looked at the screen. Something else is happening now. False Academy. Rias continued to roar as she kept punching Riser, who was only moving when she hit him. Inside her mind Rias was crying. Issei. She shouted with tears, which was reflected when her body pulled back, mouth cracking open, and blue and red translucent spheres appeared and started to merge into a black ball. Riser. That's enough. Rias stopped, the ball faded as she turned and saw a man she did not recognize, but knew she knew him from somewhere. He had blonde hair, tan skin, whisker marks on his cheeks, an orange long shirt, black pants, and sandals. His eyes were a cerulean blue, but when up close you could see that they were slightly faded. Stand down right now. The man ordered. That young man is one attack away from death and you are violently hurting him. Remove yourself from him now. Rias growled and lunged at the man, arm pulled back and ready to throw, tails whipping in the air. She threw her punch at the man's face. Stay out of my way. Rias shouted tearfully when she landed her punch, only to realize a small black orb stopped her punch. That was a pathetic attack. The man said as he closed his eyes with a sigh. Rias took note of orange pigment rings appear around the man's eyes before he opened them to see different eye color and pupil. Wizard-type fighters truly are horribly in close quarters. He raised his arm and slapped Rias away, recalling the orb. You don't understand. Riaz declared as she cried. He killed Issei. I need to kill him to avenge Issei. The man's eyes widened and went from stern and cold to sympathetic. Revenge won't get you anywhere. He replied. And I won't let a young one like yourself stain your hands with your own kind's blood. The man took one step forward, making Riaz fear him. The pressure around her intensified with the second step. As she watched him, Riaz saw his forehead bulge a bit before splitting open to reveal a red vertical eye that had black rings and 9 tomo on the rings. Be calm, child, I won't hurt you. He said calmly as he raised his hand. I am here to help you. Bullshit. Riaz charged up a second attack that she was going to use earlier and fired it only for it to touch the man's right hand, revealing a small sun-like mark and disappear. She was shocked. Her body felt weak as he stepped closer. It was like her body could tell this man was out of her league and was trying to run but couldn't. The stress from level 2 seems to have caused possible nerve damage. Naruto thought as he watched Riaz's form collapse and pant like a winded animal. He walked closer and knelt down, lowering his hand. Riaz flinched and closed her eyes only to feel him pet her covered head. It is going to be fine. He said smoothly and calmly. I'll make the pain go away and make you better. No, Riaz begged, feeling tired, not noticing that the faux body surrounding her was starting to fade. I need this to win, I need to beat him. You won. The man said with a beautiful smile. But hurting that boy further won't make you feel better tomorrow. It will only hurt your heart. For now, rest. Riaz's heavy eyelids fully closed as the false chakra body vanished, having been absorbed by the man while he petted her. Her skin had been torn off and she was bleeding badly. Now for the hard part. The man thought as he mentally flexed his fingers and touched Riaz's stomach with his hand glowing green. His third eye closing. Who are you? And step away from Riaz's grimoire. The man turned around, not stopping what he was doing, as Riaz's skin started to heal up and spread over her body. Name's Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto stated. And I think I like being where I am. Remove. Stand down. Surziches shouted. This man is a friend. Let him be. Naruto glanced over his shoulder and saw the Satans and Graphia. Been some time, hasn't it, little Zetches? Another small village lost. A woman with golden fox ears and 9 tails wearing a traditional shrine maiden outfit stated as she walked through the remains, the loss weighing heavy on her heart. How much more will those humans take until they leave us alone? This was Maiko, the leader of the Yokai faction in Kyoto. Lady Maiko. One of her followers, a Tanuki Yokai, called out, running toward her. What is it? Maiko asked as she compassed herself. There seems to be no survivors. The person said sadly. However, we feel there is a strong presence and we can't pinpoint it. I'll take care of it. For now, have everyone retreat back to the capital and I shall return swiftly. Maiko ordered, getting a bow. Please be careful. The Tanuki said worriedly. We don't want anything to happen to the successor. Maiko patted her currently flat stomach. I won't do anything to put them in danger, now you have your orders. Maiko stated, her followers vanishing. Maiko closed her eyes and opened them, tribal tattoos covered her body now, and her eyes were red. With my senjutsu activated, my sensing power is greatly enhanced. She remembered as she indeed felt a presence and it was fading fast. What shocked her was the fact it was a mix of yokai chakra and senjutsu as strong as hers. Finding the exact location in her heightened state, Maiko deactivated her sage mode and ran to the presence. After a few minutes, Maiko's ears picked up the faint cries of a baby in the direction she was going, thus picked up her pace even more and soon found the location near the center of the yokai village. The house was on fire and she could hear the baby's cries even louder. Acting quickly, Maiko used her chakra to create water and douse the flames and then entered the house and did the same for the interior. The house was now a wet, charred mess, but the baby was still crying upstairs. Maiko made her way upstairs, found the room. Inside it was a baby boy on the floor. A human baby. And it was generating the senjutsu signature Maiko felt. As he cried, Maiko felt the presence fade completely into the boy's hands and stomach. How is this possible? Maiko asked as she stared at the crying infant. No human should have chakra, let alone be able to use senjutsu, and at infancy. Maiko made her way over and picked the baby, causing him to calm down and open his eyes to reveal blue cerulean eyes. Maiko got a good look at him. He had sun-kissed blonde hair and 3 whisker-like marks on his face. Judging from this chakra I sense now, he is about 6 to 8 months old. Maiko thought as she rocked the baby, making him smile and clap his hands, showing a white circle mark on his right hand and a black crescent moon on his left. Is that how he can channel chakra? Maiko thought as she made her way out of the rundown house. Upon returning, Maiko was met with shock as she made her way to her trusted friend and doctor, Tsunade. The leader of Kyoto knocked on the door to Tsunade's manor, decorated with slug designs to symbolize her clan and her status of the slug yokai leader. Even though Maiko sat at the top of yokai hierarchy, each clan had a leader and once a month they would have meetings. Tsunade's assistant Shizune, a rabbit yokai as indicated by her long black ears, opened the door and was surprised to see Maiko holding a baby that was clearly not her own. "Greetings, Lady Maiko," Shizune said with a bow. "Nice to see you again, Shizune." Maiko bowed, keeping the baby at an even level. "Is Tsunade here? I have a special case for her to look into." "Yes, she is, I'll take you to her," Shizune stated as she stepped aside and let the matriarch of yokai into the manor. Maiko kept the baby close to her feast, her motherly instincts having kicked in as she held the babe. Shizune guided her to the large study and in they found the great doctor and slug queen. Tsunade Senju with a bottle of sake caressing her lips as she chugged it down. "Ah." Tsunade sighed in satisfaction as she removed the bottle from her face. "Humans really have outdone themselves with this." Lady Tsunade Shizune whimpered in embarrassment. Said person looked up and smirked. "So, you popped the baby out early?" Tsunade asked sarcastically, knowing from the babe's scent and chakra, it wasn't Maiko's. Maiko's face became stern, though she did chuckle a bit. "No, but I found him alone in the village that was just destroyed down south at the Kyoto borders," Maiko stated as she handed the baby to Tsunade to check over. She unwrapped his bundle, and everyone present were shocked to see what appeared to be a sun tattoo on his tiny stomach. "What is this?" Tsunade asked as she gathered some chakra in her stomach and gently poked the babe's stomach, getting a giggle from the child, making the busty blonde smile a bit while she channeled her chakra into him. "I don't know, but I feel like it is important," Maiko answered as she pointed to the boy's hands. He had 2 marks on his palms, one of a sun and the other of a crescent moon. "Who would tattoo their baby?" Shizune asked, very appalled. "I don't think these are tattoos." Tsunade spoke as she removed her hand. "They are made of chakra. But how can he have it? He is a human." Shizune looked at the baby and sure enough his scent was human. "That is impossible," Shizune stated. "Only yokai and hanyo are able to use chakra as they are born with chakra coils that channels the chakra through the body." "I know that," Maiko stated. "Surprising thing is, when I found him, he was being protected with a large amount of chakra and senjutsu chakra." The word impossible had lost all meaning at this point. "What do you plan on doing with him?" Shizune asked as she looked concerned. "I will raise him," Maiko stated as she rubbed her stomach. "He will be my child's friend." "You won't use him as a weapon against humanity?" Tsunade asked surprised. "No," Maiko answered, though her chakra did flare up a bit. "But that doesn't mean I like humans." The baby started to sniffle from the pressure he felt and started to cry again, causing the enraged Maiko to stop immediately and rush to him, picking him up. "I'm sorry little one," she cooed as she rocked him, trying to calm him. Soon the crying stopped and he fell asleep, clutching Maiko's outfit in his tiny arms, making the women smile at how cute he was. "What are you going to name him?" Shizune asked as she walked up to get a better look at him. "I don't know." Tsunade thought in silence before standing up and holding her hands out for the babe. After a small amount of effort to not wake the child, Maiko and Shizune pried his hands off her clothes and handed him to the slug queen. "I have a suggestion," Tsunade said as she looked at him. "What is it?" Maiko asked as she watched her teacher hold the child. "My grandson was named Naruto Uzumaki," Tsunade stated, her eyes starting water at the memories of her deceased family. He had blonde hair and similar eyes. "So? It's a beautiful name," Maiko stated as she watched Tsunade start to tear up. "I would be honored to have him named Naruto Uzumaki." "Thank you Maiko." Tsunade thanked her student. Maiko walked over and hugged her master as Tsunade held the newly named Naruto. After giving Naruto a medical checkup to make sure he was healthy, Maiko took him home and was, "Who is this?" Yoshimaru, a fellow Kyuubi with black hair, ears, and tails, asked as he saw the child in his pregnant wife's arms. "This is Naruto, I found him in the village I went to check out," Maiko explained. "He is human." Yoshimaru blinked as he looked at Naruto, who looked back. "A human child?" he asked as Maiko walked to the baby room they were preparing for their own child. "But he has chakra, and a lot of it." "Trust me sweetheart," Maiko said softly. "He is human." Yoshimaru was hesitant but accepted that his wife wanted this child. Skip, Kyoto, 5 years later. Maiko watched her daughter Tamamo play tag with her servant playmate Naruto in the yard. It has been calm these 5 years. However, he hasn't showed a single trait of senjutsu or that power he had when I found him, Maiko thought with slanted eyes. After she returned to the capital with Naruto, there was an uproar. He was a human child and as such, should have no right to be held by the leader of the yokai or even kept alive. Obviously, Maiko and Yoshimaru silenced their followers, saying that by taking Naruto in was a step towards peace. Many believed her and accepted her young charge while most disliked him. It got worse when Tamamo was born. The group from the hero faction attacked one of the border villages, and Yoshimaru went to save it, as Maiko was still recovering from childbirth, and he sacrificed himself to buy time for his people to escape. However, the citizens were a different matter. He is a filthy human, and yet he is allowed to play with the princess. He could hurt her. Many complaints boiled down to that in words, but the core was the older generation's anger of mistreatment by humans as being killed or kept as slaves. Maiko closed her eyes and shook her head. I don't regret saving him. Maiko thought as she looked at the children again. Naruto's hair was spiky beyond belief and was very wild. He had an upbeat attitude and was always smiling. Even though he hadn't used it since she found him, Naruto still had chakra coils producing chakra, but it was huge compared to most children his age. His chakra potency was almost at the level of the 15th strongest in the Kyoto's defense force. Her daughter Tamamo had golden blonde hair like her and was adept at using magic and chakra. She was 5 years old and could already use her chakra to climb trees with hoe hands and walk on water, while Naruto struggled due to his lack of control. Still Maiko smiled. I am very proud of them both. On Tamamo, that isn't fair. Naruto cried out when he grabbed Tamamo only for her to vanish in a puff of smoke, revealing it was a clone. Haha, nothing in the rules that say I can't use clones, Naruto. Tamamo said cheekily with a smile as she appeared behind Naruto, who turned and tried to tag her, but missed again. Maiko watched them play for another 10 minutes before she clapped her hands, getting the children's attention. That is enough for now, you two. Maiko stated as she walked up to them. Naruto was pouting, knowing she wanted Tamamo to go practice her magic and chakra while he had to continue his exercises. He made his way over to Tsunade's manor, ignoring the sneers he had thrown at him. He heard whispers of the Kyoto Yakai citizens every day when it was time for training, and he became a master of ignoring them, despite being 6. Why was I even spared? He thought when he made his way to the outer rim of the capital, the slug sector where the slug Yakai lived, and made his way to Tsunade's manor. He knocked on the door, and Shizune answered to see her favorite child besides the princess. Welcome back, Naruto. Shizune said happily as she hugged him tightly. It's good to be back. Naruto replied with a smile as he hugged his older sister figure. Follow me, Lady Tsunade is out in the field now, so let's not keep her waiting. Shizune stated as she took his hand, feeling his chakra brush against hers through their hands. Over the years, Shizune and Tsunade had kept an eye on the marks on his hands and stomach, finding nothing wrong with him. However, they noticed that once a year, October 10th, Naruto's chakra would increase drastically. Every time it happened, his chakra would change and feel different. When he turned 1, it felt like a tanuki. When he turned 2, it felt like a feline. When he turned 3, it felt like a turtle. When he turned 4, it felt like a monkey. When he turned 5, it felt like a horse. And recently it felt like a slug. Naruto never noticed, never showed any difference in personality, but it caused worry for Tsunade, Shizune, and Maiko. Shaking her head, Shizune led Naruto out and to Tsunade. Tsunade smiled when she saw her grandson and hugged him, and soon was catching him every time he was shot off a tree from his chakra when he tried to climb it. Meanwhile, Maiko was having tea with her other master and leader of the toads, Jiraiya. So, how is Naruto doing since I have been gone? Jiraiya asked as he sipped his tea. He is doing well, but his progress with his training is going slow. Maiko stated sadly. Is it because you are pushing him too hard or that you haven't asked him what he wants to be trained in? Jiraiya asked. Maiko stayed silent. You want him to be a human weapon? Maiko blinked. No, that is not what. But your actions show otherwise. Jiraiya interrupted. Yes, you are not outwardly cruel to him, but this training at such a young age is definitely cause for concern, Maiko. Jiraiya was about to continue, but looked out the window. Suddenly a large amount of nature energy was drawn to a single place. Tsunade's manor. Without thinking, Maiko jumped out the open window, followed by Jiraiya, and ran as fast as she could to the manor, and when she arrived, Maiko found a heavily wounded Tsunade cuddling a crying Naruto, while Shizune healed Tsunade's wounds. Around them were the bodies of devils and Yakai from the capital. Maiko went to check on him but stopped when he looked at her and Jiraiya. He had orange rings around his eyes and pale yellow eyes with his pupils as thick horizontal bars. His body was full of nature energy, perfectly balanced, and thus his eyes seemingly mutated into a Yakai, possibly toad or frog, to show that he was using Sage mode. Mom, he choked out as he cried. What happened? Maiko asked as she got closer and took him from Tsunade and Shizune, all of them feeling the senjutsu fade out of his body, his eyes returning to normal. We were out here training when these men appeared. Shizune responded as she finished healing her master's wounded body. They said that they wanted Naruto. Tsunade responded tiredly. Obviously we struggled, but when I got stabbed in the stomach, Naruto. I don't know what to say. Naruto said nothing as he listened, not even knowing what happened himself. I saw Granny Tsunade get hurt. He choked out in Maiko's embrace. I was so scared, then I felt warm and fuzzy, and then I blacked out. Maiko's heart began to get heavy as she calmed the 6-year-old down, as fear slowly sank into her heavy heart. Such raw power. It was even greater than what I felt when I found him as a baby. Maiko returned to the capital after telling Shizune to write a report to give to her the next day and placed Naruto in his bed with Tamamo next to her. Tamamo was worried and refused to leave her friend's side and ended up sleeping with Naruto on the futon, her 9 tails wrapping around her and him, her ears down in worry as she held him in her sleep. Maiko left the room and silently returned to her room and sat at her desk. What should I do? She thought as she began to think on what she wanted for her children. He is strong, but he isn't. That power was called out when he was in danger, so. The dawning look appeared on Maiko's face before it became one of self-loathing. Again. Naruto, age 8 and covered in bruises and cuts, looked up terrified at Maiko as she looked down at him, a silent, seething anger behind her eyes. His stomach hurt from just being hit and his eyes filled with fear tears as he could feel the wrath-filled chakra inside Maiko. Lady Maiko, I believe the boy has had enough training for the day. Jiraiya interrupted sternly. This type of training, it's so much for a mere 8-year-old human. Ever since Tsunade, Naruto and Shizune were attacked, Jiraiya had not gone on any journeys to keep an eye of Naruto. He would help train Naruto, who took a great liking to Jiraiya, calling him pervy sage, much to Jiraiya's dislike. However, most of Naruto's training came from Maiko. He is fine. Maiko growled at the toad. Now stand up and assume the stance again, Naruto. Trembling, Naruto stood up, doing as his mother teacher told him to do, but his legs and arms were shaking as he stood before her. Stop shaking. Maiko nearly shouted. You are a human who can use chakra, you can't be acting like a scared child. But that is what he is. Jiraiya snapped, getting tired of this. Naruto, come with me now. Jiraiya, Maiko started to say before the Master Toad Sage grabbed the blonde boy and vanished. Maiko clenched her hands before unclenching them, tension leaving her body as she exhaled and left to her room. Once her door was shut, Maiko fell to her knees and started crying. I am doing this for his own good. She thought as she hiccuped. He needs to be strong. Naruto is strong, but he can't use that power easily. Despite all that I have put him through, why doesn't he call on that power? Outside the door, Tamamo listened to her mother cry with her ears lying flat against her head. She too had been training alongside Naruto, but her training wasn't as bad as Naruto's. For the last 2 years, Tamamo had to watch as her mother pushed Naruto hard, sometimes yelling at him to reveal his power. What power has her this worked up? Tamamo wondered before she left to go to Tsunade for her medical training. She arrived to see Jiraiya there with Shizune, as Tsunade healed a trembling and crying Naruto. Tamamo walked over and when he saw her, he flinched. Naru? Tamamo asked, saddened he moved from her. Naruto's eyes were wide and scared. It's okay, Naruto. Shizune said soothingly. It's just Tamamo. Naruto looked up again and saw it was indeed Tamamo. Tama? He asked timidly. Naru? The young kitsune embraced her friend as he started to cry in her arms. Seeing that he was healed, Tsunade and Jiraiya left the children and Tamamo's training in Shizune's hands for the day as they went upstairs to talk. It's getting out of hand. Jiraiya stated as he and Tsunade poured sake. I know that. Tsunade answered. I heal his wounds every day, Lady Maiko trains him. But why does she do this? Jiraiya nearly shouted. She has no reason to do this to him. He is nothing but a child, yet the exercises she uses are meant for adults. Is she trying to kill him? I don't know. Tsunade answered honestly. Maiko and I have best friends for decades. She loved humans at one point, Yoshimaru especially interested in their culture. He loved Naruto just as much as Maiko does, but he was taken too soon when Tamamo was born. Jiraiya sighed as he looked down in the courtyard as Tamamo was mimicking Shizune in her healing chakra skills, with Naruto nearby watching in amazement. Tamamo seems to care for him. Tsunade stated when she watched the small kitsune cheer when she healed a small bird. Exceptional skills in healing to boot. I think they will make a perfect couple. Don't get too excited. Jiraiya replied seriously. He won't be around for long. What does Tsunade started before it dawned on her? You are going to kill him. No, I'm taking him away from here. Jiraiya replied, tilting his head to let Tsunade's fist bury into the wall. Are you out of your mind? Tsunade shouted, her healing mucus splashing from her. Maiko will not allow that at all, and if you just take him you will be considered a traitor. Jiraiya looked into the Slug Queen's eyes. What Maiko is doing will eventually kill him, or worse, make him so angry that he unleashes the power you saw on her and the Yokai faction. I don't care if I am seen as a traitor, as long as my student is safe and trained with love and care, I couldn't give a funk with what Maiko or anyone else thinks. Tsunade removed her fist from the wall and sat down again against the window. I don't like this at all. She stated sadly, her eyes tearing up as memories over the last 8 years flooded her mind. He was nothing but a troublesome baby, always crying, needing attention. She wiped her eyes of the liquid. I love him so much and it pains me to see him when he is training with Maiko. Tsunade turned to her fellow clan leader. You best take care of him, Jiraiya. I promise you I will. Jiraiya stated as he poured more sake. He will become strong under my care. At night, capital. Naruto tossed and turned on his bed, unable to sleep. His breathing was uneven and his body overheated. He could hear his heartbeat clearly as he focused on trying to go to sleep, which was evading him. Why? He thought as he looked out his window, seeing the moon. Why does mom hate me so much? Is it because I'm human? He bolted up when he heard a knock on his door. Compassing himself, Naruto walked over and opened it to see Tamamo standing there in the same sleeping yukata as him, sliding different colors, holding a stuffed animal, which was a slug. Naru, can I sleep here tonight? Tamamo asked shyly. But Lady Maiko said. Tamamo bolted forward and held him tightly. Please, she choked. I don't want to be left alone right now. Naruto was confused and scared. Maiko had forbidden him from being near Tamamo at night. Naruto sighed and held Tamamo. Like her mother, Tamamo had a connection to the Lee lines. An ancient power that spread throughout Kyoto, and each destined ruler of Kyoto had a strong connection to it. Through these lines connected the senjutsu into the leader when necessary. However, Tamamo had such a strong connection to the Lee lines, she had the power to sense emotions, and currently she was being overpowered by them again. Recently, lots of humans, devils, and fallen angels have been attacking their borders and kidnapping yokai. Tamamo could feel the anger in the survivors and their sadness. Her violet eyes widened in fear before she closed them and pressed herself against Naruto's body, her face in his neck as she cried harder. Naruto wrapped his arms around the crying princess, her fluffy tails bunched around his and her waist, as he shut the door and shuffled over to the bed, where she clung to him, crying. Having her near him, soothing whatever was bothering him as the two children were sound asleep, covered in Tamamo's golden tails. However, this peace was destroyed when Maiko took Naruto away the next morning, and he was hurt yet again by Maiko, trying to force him to reveal his power. Jiraiya, Tsunade watched in silent anger as Maiko punched Naruto hard in the stomach, causing a mix of blood and vomit to erupt from his mouth as Maiko went for a second. Stop. Maiko stopped with wide eyes as Tamamo stood in front of her, arms out with her tails trembling behind her over Naruto's tired and hurt form. Tamamo, Maiko stated as she stood up straight and looked at her daughter. Move aside. I'll get to training you in a few minutes. No. Tamamo yelled. You will stop hurting him now. Step aside, Tamamo. Maiko growled, not in the mood to play around. Tamamo entered the stance her mother had taught her. Maiko's eyes slanted before they widened and she activated her senjutsu form, with the red tattoos littering her skin and her eyes becoming red. Her senjutsu flooded the room. Tamamo nearly buckled under the pressure her mother released. Her body wanted to drop and submit, but her will kept her standing. Step aside. Now. Maiko stated slowly as she glared at her children. Her daughter barely able to stand while her friend weakly hid under Tamamo's tails. The room was flooded with more senjutsu as Tsunade and Jiraiya stepped forward. Jiraiya's body looked more toad-like, his nose being bigger and his eyes having toad pupils. Tsunade's body was covered in black marking coming from the jewel on her forehead. Stand down now, Maiko. Tsunade ordered. Maiko knew a fight between her and one of them she would most likely win, thanks to her connection to the Lee lines. But if she fought both of them, she would have a hard time and possibly all of Kyoto would be destroyed, leaving the yokai vulnerable. Inhaling, then exhaling, Maiko exited her senjutsu, as did Jiraiya and Tsunade, who turned to the children and ushered them outside to check them over and heal them. I see this is your choice. Jiraiya stated as he and the leader of Kyoto stared at each other. I see that means that I have to do what I had planned. What are you talking about? Maiko asked, not liking what Jiraiya was saying. I will be taking a trip, Jiraiya stated. And Naruto will be coming with me to train for the journey. Out of the question. Maiko stated. He is to remain here for his training under me. Take your precious trip, but Naruto stays out of it. Both re-entered senjutsu. Neither one held anything back. Courtyard. All of Kyoto, for the second time that day, felt Maiko's senjutsu and Jiraiya's senjutsu, but instead of being calm, they were filled with rage, and then one was silenced. Naruto ran up and opened the door to see his teacher on the floor, his arm missing, and several stab wounds in his torso, as his blood spread across the floor. Maiko turned, and her eyes widened when she felt nature energy be pulled to the child, as he looked on in horror at what his mother figure had done. Naruto's eyes filled with tears and he gripped his chest. His heart hurt, not physically, but emotionally as his eyes became toad-like, and then he looked tearfully at Maiko as she turned, realizing what she had done and forced him to see. Ai. Naruto screamed and gripped his head. He saw visions of 6 orange-haired men with ripple-pattern eyes standing over Jiraiya, similar wounds on him as he did now. Naruto felt a hand on his head and looked up and saw Jiraiya, covered in blood, smiling at him. The intake of nature energy slowed and stemmed as Naruto registered that Jiraiya was alive and hugged his master. Maiko stood by as Shizune and Tsunade entered the room and took Jiraiya away, leaving Naruto with Maiko. Naruto, I hate you. Maiko stepped back at this outburst. Naruto was still overflowing with senjutsu as he tearfully glared at Maiko. Don't talk to me again. You are not my family. He yelled before storming off, following the 2 clan heads. Maiko's eyes widened as it dawned upon her what she had done was something she would never be forgiven for. What have I done? She thought as she fell to her knees, grasping her head while tears flooded her eyes. Skip, 9 years. War. That is what the human world, and thus the yokai world, had been subjected to the last 3 years. The faction war was in full swing, all sides, devils, angels, fallen angels, and now the yokai faction the last month had lost many lives and the human world was suffering. Humans fled their homes as their battles ravaged the land and boiled the seas. Maiko led her people alongside the yokai clan heads and heads of all other monster yokai clan heads from all over the world, and right beside Jiraiya and Tsunade stood Naruto, age 17. He was one of 3 leaders of his squad, Lukoa the Quetzalcoatlan Sun Wukong, the great sage equal to heaven. They were one of the strongest groups under the leadership of those 3. 1, 2. Naruto had gotten strong, and Maiko was impressed by his mastery over his senjutsu, thanks to Jiraiya. Jiraiya, now crippled due to his spinal cord being severed, could not take his trip and had to leave it to one of his spies. Though he did teach Naruto everything he could about senjutsu, but techniques were out of the question. Though Naruto had a natural affinity with senjutsu so Jiraiya had little to teach, but he was still very proud. Many more battles burned the human world, the factions making a ceasefire to deal with the pesky white and red dragon fighting, but then the war resumed and Naruto was constantly outmatched. Yes, he was a master of senjutsu, but his body was still human. Currently, it was a break period between all factions, a 1-week truce to heal as much as possible, and then fight again. Damn it. Naruto shouted as he fell off his bed, clutching his head. His body covered in bandages. His head felt like something was trying to surface, and he could vaguely hear voices, 9 in total trying to call out to him, but always falling short. And memories. Memories of a person of the same name as him. They were, like the voices, vague and never clear. But they hurt him emotionally. Naruto had lost many friends during the war, and it was starting to take its toll on him on top of his current turmoil. Whoever is funking with me shall pay. Naruto thought angrily as he stood up to get back on his bed when the door opened. I said I don't need healing. Get the funk out. He shouted aggressively, not wanting to be near anyone. It's been a long time, Naru. Naruto's eyes widened as he turned his wounded head to see Tamamo standing before him. Beautiful. He whispered as he gazed upon his childhood friend. Tamamo had filled out modestly for a 17-year-old kitsune. Her hair was cut very short and she wore a very simple yukata. Thank you, Naru. Tamamo giggled with a blush. You've gotten very handsome yourself. Naruto blushed in response as he sat on his bed. What brought you here? He asked before wincing as his broken rib pinched him with pain. Tamamo became serious and walked over, her hands glowing green with healing chakra, and soon she healed his body and started to remove the bandages. I was very sad when you never returned. Tamamo said as she unwrapped the bandages. When Jiraiya was healing, Naruto refused to see Maiko or Tamamo. Tamamo was most affected by this, and her training with her mother stopped altogether as Tsunade trained the successor to the Yokai throne in healing and her own special jutsu. I'm sorry. Naruto said somberly. I. Tamamo leaned in and wrapped her arms around his bare chest. I understand. Tamamo muttered. Mother made you very angry and in turn you took it out on me as well. Please forgive me. Naruto asked as he touched Tamamo's hand. Tamamo shifted, her head directly behind Naruto's, causing her fists to touch Naruto's back, her breath hitting his neck, making him feel aroused. Naru. Lemon scene happened. I love you, Naru. Tamamo whispered tiredly, her tail swaying gently as her ears twitched as she listened to Naruto's heartbeat. I love you too, Tama. Naruto responded happily as they fell asleep. Wukong, Lukoa, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Shizune cried tears of happiness when they saw Tamamo with Naruto the next day, happy to see them again. Shizune and Tsunade even more as Tamamo had a special glow about her and her scent had changed. The rest of the week for the two teens was mostly fecks due to Tamamo's heat cycle still in progress, but they caught up on the years lost Naruto had spent separated from Tamamo. At the end of the week and the end of Tamamo's heat, Naruto held her close. "Tamamo," Naruto said, getting her attention from her full name being used and his tone. "I want you to go back to the capital." Tamamo's face became a frown. "Why?" Naruto chuckled and touched her stomach. "I don't want the both of you getting hurt or worse, killed." Tamamo's eyes widened and touched her belly, channeling senjutsu and focused. Her eyes filled with happy tears as she felt the faintest signs of infant chakra growing. Naruto was flown back as Tamamo kissed him. They smiled happily and the next day, Tamamo returned to the capital, not telling Maiko. The next day when the war resumed, 666 arrived. The factions were overpowered like an infant fighting Mike Tyson. And that is where we find ourselves now. The hulking creature towered over many of the faction members. Odd had to leave, trying to find a way to stop it, while Michael was left in charge of the angels. Naruto, in his senjutsu, Wukong and Lukoa, led their segment of the Yakai faction against 666 and the fellow faction members against 666. Most of their men were lost and Naruto had been knocked back, his leg broken. Lukoa transformed into her giant feathered dragon form and slammed into 666, wrapping herself around its body, while Wukong became a giant, multi-armed, version of himself and proceeded to attack, but failed as 666 broke free of Lukoa's hold and used her serpentine form as a whip and sent the two deities flying, forcing them to revert back to their human forms. 666 roared and was about to move on when it saw Naruto moving, his fear pungent as he struggled to move. Naruto closed his eyes as he awaited death when he watched 666 move closer to him. "I'm so sorry Tama, I'm sorry that I couldn't be there for our child," he thought as he made peace. His eyes opened when he felt warm liquid splash over his body. Naruto's pupils dilated to the point that they nearly vanished. There, impaled on 666's claws, preventing them from going any further near him, was Maiko in senjutsu mode. 666 removed its fingers from her body and moved elsewhere, leaving the woman to collapse onto Naruto. "Maiko?" Naruto shouted as he propped her up, blood gushing out of her wounds. Maiko's glazed violet eyes moved to look at Naruto, and she weakly smiled. "I am sorry," she muttered before going limp. Naruto sensed her chakra flow completely stop. She was dead. Wukong, Lukoa, and any of the surviving Yakai, devils, fallen angels and angels nearby heard his cries of anguish as he held the woman who spared him death as an infant, and when they arrived Naruto was unconscious, holding Maiko, covered in blood, his eyes completely white, and his face holding grief. Naruto's mind. Naruto walked aimlessly in the darkness. He had no idea where he was or if he was still alive. He could feel a familiarity, but it was vague. After walking for who knows how long, he saw a faint light. Naruto decided to go towards it and after many hours of walking he was confronted with a fruit. It looked similar to a peach, but was a deeper violet than a peach, which was pink. However, Naruto knew it wasn't a normal fruit from the massive amounts of chakra within it. The fruit may have been small, the chakra inside of it was near the level of power 666 possessed, maybe even more. Gingerly, Naruto grasped the fruit and pulled it to his face. Contemplation was what happened for the next unknown amount of time before the human grit his teeth and then sank them into the fruit. "It's good to see you again, Naruto." Human world. Tsunade sighed tiredly as she placed a wet cloth on Naruto's forehead. It had been a month since the death of Maiko, thus their faction was without a leader, but they weren't the only one. Leviathan and Asmodeus were killed by 666, while God died sealing the creature away a week ago, yet the three factions fought, while the Yakai faction decided to retreat in fear and confusion. How can this get any worse? Tsunade thought sadly as she removed her hands from Naruto's head and checked his body again. He was fully healed but would not wake up. Which is why Tsunade was frightened when his eyes opened and he shot up. "Jesus, don't scare me like that Naruto." Tsunade shouted as she decked Naruto in the head. Unfazed by the action, Naruto looked at her. "How long was I out?" Tsunade noticed something was off immediately when he did not react to her hitting him like she always did. His eyes were now a slightly faded blue, so faint that it was barely noticeable, but Tsunade could see it. Tsunade explained what was happening and Naruto listened, not interrupting her at all. Naruto stood up and walked out, not even stopping when Tsunade told him to, and he vanished when the tent flaps closed behind him. Tent. Lukoa and Wukong had stayed behind to wait for their friend to wake. "Do you think Naruto is going to be alright?" Lukoa asked as she checked her sake for curses. She was always careful when drinking alcohol since her fall from heavenly grace. "I trust him," Wukong stated as he downed his sake. He is strong, he would not let something like this keep him down for long. Lukoa nodded sadly, her heterochromatic eyes holding intense sadness and worry. You are right, Naruto said as he opened their tent. It did not keep me down. Naruto. Both deities shouted when they saw him, giving him a big hug. What took you so long? Wukong asked as he punched Naruto's arm. Are you sure you should be walking? Lukoa asked worriedly. Naruto smiled and nodded before he became serious. I need to ask you two a favor. Naruto stated as he looked at his teammates. Battlefield. The factions were tired. It is what war does when it goes on for years. Michael and Gabriel were starting to worry as the angels too, the most casualties out of the three factions. Lucifer and Beelzebub were starting to lose their lust for battle. Gabriel was excited as the fallen angels lost the least number of warriors, but Azazel was getting tired of war along with Shemhazai. This is it. The heads of each faction thought. The final wave of this war. Right as they started to charge, Naruto, Wukong and Lukoa appeared in the center of them all, stoic and calm. Who are you? Gabriel shouted, angered by this group. Everyone could feel Naruto was human, and all knew Wukong and Lukoa, and all thought what could they want. Naruto took a deep breath. I am Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto stated loudly, all members hearing him. End this war end, now. Many warmongers laughed. As if a human could stop any of us. A random devil shouted. Naruto's composure never faltered while Wukong and Lukoa growled and were about to retaliate, but Naruto held his arm out, halting them. It ends now. Naruto stated before he pointed to the devils. You have lost two Satans. He points to the fallen angels. You have lost many warriors. He pointed to the angels. You lost God. Naruto took another breath. We of the Yokai faction lost almost half of our citizens and our leader. A moment of silence let those that wanted peace to realize this. Every faction has lost something. Naruto stated. So, to preserve your lives, end this now with peace. You work together to defeat the Sky Dragons, and due to them the Yokai faction was pulled into the war. Now leave and return home. Gabriel, getting tired of this talk, manifested a large light spear. Enough of this garbage. Gabriel shouted as he threw the spear at the lowly human scum. Lukoa jumped in front of Naruto, but was shocked when he appeared before her. Naruto's body was engulfed in golden energy, and the spear was repelled back and it dissipated. The energy dimmed and Naruto stood before the factions. He looked like a battle-hardened sage with his clothes being made of golden yellow chakra and black clothes. Behind him were 6 black floating orbs. His eyes were yellow with a fox-lit pupil mixed with a toad bar pupil. His whisker marks covered in solid black bars. 2 of his bangs floated up to look similar to horns. On his forehead was a vertical third eye. It was blood red with a ripple pattern and 9 tomo on the ripples. Those who still thirst for battle may stay and fight us, but be warned. The 12 of us won't hold back. Naruto declared. Ha! You must have lost your mind. Gabriel shouted as he laughed but stopped when 9 massive figures formed from Naruto's power. The tanuki with 1 tail. The nekomata with 2 tails. The turtle with 3 tails. The monkey with 4 tails. The horse with 5 tails. The slug with 6 tails. A beetle with 6 wings and 1 tail. An ox with 8 tails. And a kitsune with 9 tails. They were constructs of chakra made of Naruto's golden yellow chakra with black markings on their bodies like Naruto's. What is this power? Everyone, including Lukoa and Wukong, thought. The weaker members of every faction collapsed and shook at this power, while the stronger ones could feel it and knew he was now as strong as 666, possibly stronger. Nearby, hiding their power, was a small child with long pitch black hair, silver eyes, and she wore a simple clothed dress. This was Office the infinite dragon god, Ouroboros dragon. He has awakened his power. Office thought happily. I can't wait to hold you in my arms, Ashura. I am at full power while all of you can barely stand, let alone fight. Naruto stated, getting chuckles from the tailed beasts. Come on, let's slaughter them Naruto. Shukaku laughed sadistically as sand whipped around his ethereal body. Naruto stayed silent as he felt the emotions of the factions, thanks to Kurama's negative emotion sensing and Senjutsu sensory power being enhanced by his Byakugan. No. Naruto stated. They are going to leave. As he said this, the angels gathered and returned to heaven. The devils and fallen angels returned to the underworld. Lukoa and Wukong looked at Naruto. What will we do now? Kakuo asked curiously before she and the other tailed beasts were returned to Naruto's body as he powered down. Now, we rebuild. The gray skies wept heavy rain as Naruto, Tamamo, Tsunade, Jiraiya, Wukong, Lukoa, and a few other Yokai leaders in Japan and from around the world watched as Maiko was buried, the burial led by an elder of the faction called Baba. Tamamo was crying as she watched her mother vanish beneath the cold earth and Naruto held her as she cried, no tears in his eyes. He, obviously, was powered down to base power. However, there was one tell sign of his dramatic change, and it was the closed eye on his forehead. The eyelids were visible for everyone to see. "So, you did not care for her?" Kurama asked Naruto from within the mindscape. "She took care of me and loved me, Kurama." Naruto responded as everyone separated for the small after gathering. "How could I not care? Her form of training was attempted murder." Chimay spoke up. "From what we saw when we reunited, she was not a loving mother." The tailed beasts agreed as Naruto cut his connection when his teammates that survived the war approached him. "Naruto," Wukong said worriedly as he saw Tamamo. "Are you doing alright?" "Yes, I'm fine, Wukong." Naruto replied as he sat down with Tamamo, with Luko sitting next to her. There, Luko said, wearing Aztec clothing and a cape adorned with rainbow-colored feathers, as Tamamo hugged her, face planting in her giant wrists. "Big sis, Luko is here." Tamamo cried into Luko's chest and babbled for several minutes, while Naruto silently listened. Everyone mourned at their own pace, and eventually, the party ended with Naruto bidding his teammates farewell for the evening, before he returned home with Tsunade, Jiraiya, Shizune, and Tamamo, who was asleep with tear stains on her cheeks. Naruto took Tamamo to her room and ran some water in a basin and used a wet cloth to clean her face and a dry towel to dry her face before he changed her into her night attire and joined her in bed. "Where will we start rebuilding?" Madatabi asked as she cleaned her flames. "Tamamo will need to be crowned successor to the throne," Naruto told them. "Then, I'll need to reverse all the damage the earth suffered from this war." "Meaning you will be gone for months on end, right?" Seiken asked. "You can't leave, Tamamo will need you during the pregnancy." Naruto silently agreed, but knew the world needed him too. So, early the next morning, Naruto woke up refreshed and fully healed. Tamamo was crowned successor and watched sadly as Naruto, Wukong, and Luko left, knowing they were doing what was best, but did not want her beloved to go. 7 months pass. Tamamo has been establishing new sections of Kyoto, helping those in need and sheltering those who need living in the capital palace while they rebuild their homes. Now 8 months pregnant, Tamamo heard stories of Naruto, Wukong, and Luko traveling around the world and miraculously restoring the landscape through various means. While this made Tamamo happy, she was worried Naruto would not return on time for their baby to be born. Jiraiya and Tsunade helped, both with leading Kyoto and helping her through her pregnancy in Naruto's place. Each day was slow and repetitive, with no end in sight for Tamamo, as her hormones and emotional instability kept getting worse the longer Naruto was gone. Currently, Tamamo was brushing her short hair, wearing a loose and simple kimono as it was nighttime in the spring of Kyoto, and her swollen belly suddenly hurt when the baby kicked. Pressing gently against her child, Tamamo's eye twitched. "It's alright, little one," Tamamo whispered to her baby. The baby kicked again, then again. Tamamo felt massive amounts of discomfort as she pressed her belly. About to call for Tsunade, worried something was wrong, a hand gently caressed her stomach. "Easy there, little one, or you might hurt your mommy," a voice said as the kicking stopped immediately. Tamamo's eyes widened as she turned and saw Naruto kneeling next to her rubbing her stomach. "Naru?" she muttered in disbelief. Naruto nodded and then grimaced when he felt a senjutsu-enhanced fist collide with his face. "What took you so long?" Tamamo shouted aggressively as her 9 tails swayed dangerously behind her. "I have a good reason," Naruto said calmly as he touched Tamamo's stomach again and pressed his face against it, the baby kicking again, as if it knew who was there. "Oh," Tamamo said slightly calmer but still upset. "So, what was so important it took nearly 8 months for you to return?" Naruto chuckled and stood up, pulling Tamamo closer and rubbed his cheek against hers, which she returned, purring. "I want to show you something," Naruto stated. "What is it?" Tamamo asked before she tensed and blushed when Naruto picked her up bridal style with ease. "What are you doing, Naru?" "Taking you someplace special," Naruto stated with a cheeky grin before he closed his eyes, focused his chakra, and his third eye open. Tamamo felt his power for the second time, the first was 7 months prior when he ended the war, but she hadn't seen it up close. It wasn't as strong as it was before, but the power in the eye was powerful enough that she could feel it. "Beautiful," she said as she looked at him. "Thought you would be freaked out," Naruto said as he focused his chakra through his Rin Sharingan and the portal appeared. Carrying Tamamo, Naruto entered the portal and stepped out in a beautiful valley. There at the waterfall were 2 giant statues. One was of Tamamo's likeness and the second of Naruto's, who was kneeling and holding Tamamo's hand. Tamamo covered her mouth when Naruto let her stand, and when she turned to look at him, Naruto was on his knee, with a diamond wedding ring in his hand. "Tamamo, will you marry me?" Naruto asked. Tamamo, crying tears of happiness, flung herself at Naruto, hugging him tightly. "Yes, yes, 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 yes," she shouted happily as she was spun around, laughing. Naruto let her slide down to her feet and kissed her lips before holding out her hand and placing the ring on her finger. The Mamo smiled as she looked at the ring before a very sharp pain shot through her, forcing her to grab her swelled stomach and cry out in pain. "Ama," Naruto shouted worriedly. "It's time," Mamo said painfully, looking up to see Naruto's face in slight confusion. "The baby is coming now." "Kyoto." Shizune was humming as she trimmed her bonsai tree in silence of nature. The moon was full, giving her enough light to see, and the subtle sounds of the wind kept her cool, but not too cold. Shizune was at peace until a loud crash scared her and she accidentally clipped much of her poor bonsai off. "Tsunade, Shizune, anyone, we need help." Hearing her name and recognizing the voice, Shizune ran from the tree and into the slug manor and saw Naruto holding Tamamo, who was holding her belly and in pain from her breathing pattern, her sweating face, and cries of pain. "The baby," Shizune stated as she led Naruto to the medical bay of the manor and ordered one of the servants to get Tsunade up. Naruto soon placed Tamamo down and held her hand as many nurses and Shizune helped her get ready as Tsunade prepared to guide her through her labor. Naruto had fought in the faction war, but nothing scared him more than Tamamo in labor for 5 hours before she dilated to 10 cm and then spent over an hour screaming and crushing his hand as she pushed their child out of her. However, the pain was worth it when the cries of a healthy baby girl was heard. "Hot water and towels," Tsunade ordered as she clipped the umbilical cord connecting Tamamo to her daughter. "Ama," Naruto whispered to his tired fiancé. Her face was sweaty and pale, her short golden hair lost some color, but she was peacefully sleeping at the moment. Shizune walked over and helped Naruto wipe the sweat off Tamamo, while Tsunade cleaned the baby before wrapping her in a blanket and placing her in Tamamo's arms, which Naruto positioned to hold their daughter. Tamamo woke up the next day, sore and tired, but felt a small weight on her chest and arms. She looked down to see her unnamed daughter sleeping peacefully with Naruto sleeping in a chair next to the bed. At that moment, the door to the room opened and Jiraiya wheeled himself in, taking notice Tamamo was awake. "Sorry," Jiraiya whispered. "Did I wake you?" Tamamo shook her head. "No, you didn't," she softly replied before she looked at her daughter and held her up closer, gently stroking her soft cheek, making the infant's eye to twitch. She had small patch of golden hair like herself and very small fox ears on her head. She had no tails currently, all yokai with animal traits like tails would not show them until 3 months old, but the ears were there as they were not as big or risks of childbirth to the mother. "She is adorable," Jiraiya stated as he watched the mother and daughter. "Do you have a name picked?" "I want to name her Yusaka," Tamamo stated as she looked at her sleeping fiancé. "Naru will agree with me." Jiraiya smiled. "Will you be her godfather?" Tamamo asked. Jiraiya blinked. Tamamo did not like the silent pause that took place before Jiraiya nodded. Tamamo looked at Yusaka and then at Jiraiya. "You want to hold her?" Tamamo asked. Jiraiya wheeled himself as close as he could and reached out as Tamamo carefully removed Yusaka from her chest and into the toad's arms. Jiraiya, a master of Toad Senjutsu and leader of the Toad clan, felt immense pride and love for this baby he held swell in his heart as she woke up and opened her eyes, blinded by the dull light nearby. Her eyes settled on Jiraiya and she giggles before she reached out to him. Tamamo watched with a smile as Jiraiya played with Yusaka before she glanced at Naruto, who was still asleep. Using one of her tails, Tamamo brought Naruto to her and held him into her fists and fell asleep again. Noticing that Yusaka's parents were asleep, Jiraiya wheeled himself and Yusaka out and handed the babe to Shizune, who took Yusaka to the nursery. 1 month passes and the entire continent was happy. Tamamo and Naruto were getting married, Yusaka in her mother's arms instead of flowers on this day. Naruto sat next to the Queen of Kyoto as king, and this was not accepted by all. Those who had despised him as a child left Kyoto when they heard of his wedding to the queen and would not stand to live under him. Next to the couple were Jiraiya, Tsunade, Lukoa, and Wukong, who was the life of the party with his duplicate magic, transformation magic, and his overall superb acrobatic skills. Lukoa had brought exotic fruit and food from her culture with her as a gift to the newlyweds and prayed for their good fortune. Soon, Lukoa was on the table, dancing away getting hollered at and catcalled as she was a very voluptuous woman. However, the festivities were cut short when Naruto sensed devils nearby at the border of Kyoto. Tamamo said when she felt them too. "They are in trouble. They are hurt." Naruto's hands twitched. He did not like devils very much, but if his wife was concerned, then he might as well check them out. Naruto entered sage mode, pinpointing where the devils were, and slowly slipped out of the celebrations. "You are really whipped, Naruto." Son Goku the Four Tails laughed. Naruto smirked but overall ignored the beast as he left the party and activated a portal with his Rin Sharingan while in sage mode. Stepping through it, Naruto was hundreds of miles away and could see no one there but could sense them with sage mode. "Now I get to try this out." Naruto thought as he deactivated his Rin Sharingan. Byakugan. Naruto's veins around his eyes bulged and became prominent as his vision expanded and easily found the devils with his Sage mode. There were 4 and they seemed unable to get closer. Naruto had applied seals to strengthen the existing barrier around Kyoto, which acted as the border, but now it prevented any unwanted beings in Kyoto, manly devils and fallen angels. This is actually pretty cool. Naruto thought with giddiness as he spied on the 14 devils. There were 3 men and 1 woman, who was very busty from what Naruto saw as the Byakugan showed black and white silhouettes with the chakra points, but since they were devils they had no chakra points. Deactivating the Dojutsu, Naruto walked to them and made his presence known. All 4 devils felt a familiar power burst to life as they all turned and saw Naruto walking casually to them, dressed in an elegant male kimono, chest open, with his eyes showing his Sage mode was active. Well, Naruto stated in a disapproving tone. Looks like we have some unwanted guests on my border. Naruto Uzumaki. Said Sage looked at the one who called his name and knew he was a Gremory from the Crimson Hair. I am Surzich's Gremory, Surzich's introduced himself. And with me are Seraphol Citri, Ajuka Astareth, and Falbium Glaciolabolas. Naruto nodded. Alright, now that we are acquainted by name, why are you here? Naruto asked as he sat on air, cross-legged, making the devils blink at what he was doing. Surzich's took a breath and then fell to his hands and knees, pressing his head against the ground. Please, he said loudly. Train me and my friends. Naruto raised an eyebrow, then the other as the other 3 joined Surzich's on the ground, prostrating themselves. Why should I give up my precious time training a possible enemy? Naruto asked. We need to get strong. Falbium stated, still face in the dirt. We need to become strong because the Satan faction is too strong for us, of the anti-Satan faction, to deal with for much longer. What is the underworld split? Naruto asked, internally surprised to hear of this. After the faction war ended 9 months ago, the surviving 2 Satans died from their injuries and their children wanted to take the throne. Seraphol explained. We and our group want new Satans and thus a civil war erupted. And you want to involve my people in this civil war? Naruto asked aggressively. No, we want you to train us so we don't get the human world involved, thus your people would not have to face war again. Ajuka said. Please, we want the war to end, because if we continue, we will be wiped out entirely. Naruto was quiet, trying to decide on what to do. I don't feel any negative emotions coming from them, but they are devils, so we should use Tsukiyomi. Kurama urged with the other beasts. It's the best way to figure out if they are lying. Naruto thought about it. Stand up you 4. Naruto said as he stood up from his air chair and walked to the barrier. The 14 devils looked up and gasped as their eyes glazed over and became lidded, their eyes gaining the same pattern as the Rin Sharingan on Naruto's forehead as he activated Tsukiyomi and started questioning them. Meanwhile, old Baba stood alone at the wedding. She had just watched the princess become queen and then married holding the small bastard child known as Yusaka, disapproving of the latter too. I think our royalty is now tainted by human blood. Baba thought as she walked outside to the courtyard of the old compound. Baba saw Tsunade and Jiraiya drinking directly from large sake basins. Hey old bat. Jiraiya shouted with a cheerful laugh. Come have a drink. Baba said nothing as she sat with the 2 of them. So, Tsunade muttered as she poured the seer her drink. I heard you stopped talking to Tamamo a few months back. Care to explain why? Baba's eyes narrowed as she sipped her booze. We had a disagreement where we both stood strongly on our opinions and were unable to come to an understanding. Baba stated. Tsunade listened carefully as Jiraiya chugged his sake, sighing happily as he leaned back, propped on some prototype prosthetic legs that Tsunade had been making the last month. Baba soon left, leaving a sour taste in the advisors' mouths. Kyoto border. Naruto released the devils from Tsukiyomi, keeping his Rin Sharingan activated. Well, what did you do? Seraphol asked as she felt exhaustion coursing through her body. I made sure you and your friends were telling me the truth. Naruto answered truthfully. I don't trust devils easily, but after going through your minds, I can say that I will give you all some of my time. All 4 devils smiled and stood up when Naruto held up his hand. However, you will have to put up with my clones as I have a honeymoon to get to. Naruto said with a cheeky smile. Wait, you're married? Falbium asked, shocked. Naruto held up his left hand, showing a ring. Just an hour ago. Naruto stated as he made a small opening in the barrier. Now enter before I leave you out here. The devils entered and watched Naruto close the barrier. How old are you? Ajuka asked, noticing Naruto looked very young to be tied down to marriage. I'm 17. Naruto said as he opened a portal to his home. No funking way. Surzich's shouted. There is no way you are our age. Naruto punched Surzich's in the face. Watch your language, I have an infant daughter. Naruto stated sternly as he walked through the portal, sticking his head back through it. "Now move your asses." The devils followed Naruto, and they were wide-eyed as they realized they were now in the capital, more specifically the letter compound Naruto and Tamamo lived. Next day. Naruto and Tamamo waved goodbye to everyone before they headed to their honeymoon spot, a small house near the valley. Naruto proposed to Tamamo. Lukoa held baby Yasaka as the babe was wide-eyed at the feather serpent's large feasts, tapping them like they were made of mochi. Son Wukong, Jiraiya, who was walking with a cane as he got used to his new legs, Tsunade, Lukoa, and Shizune. The 4 devils were with them alongside 4 clones of Naruto. "Now," one of the clones stated as he turned to the devils. "We can begin your torture." "You mean training, right?" Falbium asked nervously as the clones, the 2 advisors, Lukoa and Wukong turned to them with sinister smiles. "We know what he said. I think we may have made a mistake." The devils thought as they were separated with 1 clone each for private training. At night. "Naru." Tamamo cried as she and Naruto came, their bodies sweaty and tired. "I love you," Naruto said as he moved and collapsed on the bed. Tamamo snuggled into her husband with a smile, and both fell asleep. Flashback dream. Naruto, in 6 Paths Ashura Kurama mode, glared at Sasuke, who stood across from him in his perfect Susanoo. "Sasuke." "Naruto." The 2 giants lunged, large-scale attacks in their hands as they clashed. The 2 avatars vanished, leaving Naruto and Sasuke flying towards each other, Chidori in Sasuke's left hand with a Rasen Shuriken powered by all the tailed beasts, making the core black, in Naruto's right hand. Right as they were 10 feet apart, Naruto thrust his hand forward, extending his chakra arm and slamming the Rasen Shuriken into Sasuke's Chidori. Wind beats lightning. Thus, the Rasen Shuriken sliced through the Chidori, cut Sasuke's left arm off before hitting him and detonating, the millions of small wind blades cutting Sasuke's chakra network to nothing. Naruto felt tired as he lost the ability to fly when he fell out of 6 Path Sage mode, falling into the water with Sasuke's left arm. Then flashback dream. Naruto woke up, it was morning. "I think I was lucky to survive that," Naruto thought as he removed himself from Tamamo's tails and walked to the bathroom. "Should I tell Tama about my past? What I am?" He looked at his hands, seeing the sun on his right hand and the moon on his left. "How did I even survive and get brought here?" Naruto thought as he did his business. "I should have died from drowning. So how did I get here and how do I have Sasuke's part of Old Man 6 Paths chakra?" Naruto washed his hands and exited. "And why were my memories and powers stuck in that fruit?" he thought. "Something wrong?" Naruto blinked and turned to see his naked wife looking at him with concern. "No, just was thinking too hard on something." Naruto laughed as he hugged her while locking lips. Tamamo moaned and her tails wrapped around him. "I want to be unable to walk after this." Tamamo purred as she pulled him back to the bed. 3 days later. Naruto entered the training grounds and smirked when he saw the 4 devils ready, but terrified. "Alright lil Zetches, continue your control training. Seraphil, try to make your ice work like living creatures. I know it's hard, but the moment you can make ice move like any living thing, more possibilities open. Ajuka, put the weights back on and run 250 times to build your muscles, it will strengthen your magic. Albium, your spatial awareness is best to push it to its max by dodging Seraphil's ice creatures," Naruto stated as he sat down. "Chop, chop. Don't call me lil Zetches." Zetches grumbled. "I'm older than you by 3 months. But did you stop a war?" Naruto asked. "No. Shut up and deal with it," Naruto stated as he made a clone to help Tamamo back to their compound and to look for Yasaka. Zetches grumbled and went to his corner and started his training while the others started. "Just you wait, Naruto." Zetches thought aggressively. "I'll catch up to you. We all will." Next day. While Naruto's clone was watching his students, Naruto was out in the courtyard with Jiraiya, Tsunade, Shizune, Tamamo, and baby Yasaka in his hands, happily giggling and tapping his face as he made funny faces and rubbed his cheek against hers, making her smile. "I think we need a family portrait," Jiraiya stated as he watched the newlyweds' parents play with their daughter. "You don't have one yet." Naruto went silent and looked behind him, where Maiko's study was. Since her death, neither Naruto or Tamamo went in there to empty it to many memories, especially the portrait of Maiko holding the 2 of them as children, both smiling happily as the piece was being painted. It happened before Maiko suddenly became cold towards him. "I think that is a wonderful idea," Tamamo said as she clapped her hands in front of her mouth. Tsunade smiled as Jiraiya summoned one of his toad clansmen, who was an excellent artist, complete with a canvas and paint set. After fretting over the location, Naruto sat sideways, with Tamamo on his lap sitting looking at him sideways, both holding Yasaka together. The toad artist made quick work of his setting and finished the piece in a mere 30 minutes. Naruto and Tamamo looked at the painting and soon hung it up in the great hall of the compound where each head of Kyoto had one of them in their family. It had been 2 weeks since Naruto allowed the devils to train under him and his family. However, Naruto was currently far from Kyoto, in the middle of the ocean standing on the water with 7 clones who were being placed in a hexagon formation around Naruto, 1,000 meters apart. "Hey boss," a clone of Naruto said as he walked to the original. "The other 6 are stationed and are awaiting orders." Naruto smiled as he looked at his clone. "Alright, dispel knowing that they can activate it," Naruto said, watching the clone pop and then Naruto and his 4 clones getting the memories. "Alright." The 6 clones in their position said. 6 red yang formation. The hexagon of chakra appeared and rose to the sky. "Perfect, they did it right," Naruto said as he activated his 6 paths mode. "What are we doing that requires a barrier jutsu?" Chimei asked as he and the other beasts were out of the loop. However, they got a part of their answer when they were drawn out in their chakra beast forms like they were during the war. "I remembered something and I want to test it out," Naruto told them as his Rin Sharingan activated. "Susanoo." A burst of purple chakra appeared around all the tailed beasts and wrapped around them, surprising them all. After a minute, all the beasts were covered in Susanoo armor, unique to them and their shapes. "Amazing," Madatabi said as she gazed at her armor and the armor of her siblings. "So, this is what it is like to don Susanoo." "I know, it's awesome." Kurama chuckled. "Naruto, make me a sword." A massive purple katana appeared next to Kurama, who grabbed it and drew it from its sheath. "Just like when we fought against Obito when he was the 6th path sage." Kurama laughed when he sliced through the water, the sliced wind hitting the barrier, warping it. "Now I have something else I want to try," Naruto said as he looked at the chakra constructs while he removed the armor. The beasts watched before they felt strange. They could see what each other were seeing. "Holy shit." Shukaku shouted as he pointed at Jayuki. "You have a Rin Sharingan growing out of your head." "You too," Jayuki shouted. Naruto laughed as he deactivated it. "Good, it worked," Naruto stated, getting the attention of the beasts. "Now our teamwork will be better, like Pain's 6 paths." Seiken and Kurama agreed, having faced the paths of Pain in the other lives, Seiken with his previous Jinchuriki and Kurama when he fought Pain with Naruto. Naruto recalled the beasts but stayed in his 6 paths mode. "Amaterasu," Naruto thought as he looked around, black flames bursting around where his eyes looked, boiling the water. "That would be good to use against anyone who annoys us," Isobu stated. "Though I would rather just sleep at the bottom of the ocean in silence." Naruto focused and turned the flames off. "It feels weird though, using these techniques of the uchiha," Naruto said as he looked at his hands, the sun and moon marks on his palms. "But I know that they will be useful." "Naruto," Kakuo said. "Can you use the outer path? Samsara of Heavenly Life Jutsu?" Naruto deactivated his power, his clones and the barrier and opened a portal to Kyoto. "I probably could," Naruto thought as he stepped through and walked out the other end in his office. "But that technique is an act of equivalent exchange, for the dead to be brought back, I must give up my life. But there were also the pantheons with their gods of death. They could possibly try to kill me for messing with their turf." The beasts agreed. They themselves could not be killed in their world. But that doesn't mean that it's still applied here. They could possibly die and not reform. Naruto blinked as he wrapped his arms around his wife, spun her around, and kissed her giggling face. He said as he put her down, a smile of his own. "How are they coming along?" "They are doing great," Thomas said as she released her husband. "Seraphol's ice mobility is much better, Falbium's spatial awareness is near Sage user level, Ajuka's body has gotten stronger, thus his magic reserves have grown, and Lil Zech has learned how to turn his arm into power of destruction, making it intangible." "Wow, really?" Naruto asked with giddiness. "How did he learn to do that?" "From watching you apparently," Tamamo said, putting her finger to her chin with a clueless look. "He said he remembered the beasts you summoned during the war and how they look like pure magic, so through trial and error, he managed to turn himself into his magic." Naruto grinned. "That is awesome." "I know right?" Tamamo responded with a giddiness that matched her age of 16. Shizune walked into the office with Yasaka, her kimono top open to reveal one shoulder and her friest, as she was nursing the fox kit, who had one tail now, after a month and a half after being born, which wagged happily as she drank. "Oh, Naruto, you're back," Shizune said, her cheeks tinting red in embarrassment. She may be his friend, family and professional doctor, but having herself as exposed as she was even for her to nurse Yasaka was embarrassing to the rabbit yokai. "Did you figure out what you wanted to? You vanished off our radar for a short while before you came back." "Yeah, I had a barrier up," Naruto said as he sat down with Tamamo going over and taking her daughter from Shizune, helping Shizune stay covered with her tails while Shizune put her kimono back in place. It kept people from feeling me out, I should have let you guys know. What for? Shizune asked curiously as she sat across from Naruto. Naruto was silent for a while. Shizune, can you get Jiraiya and Tsunade please? Naruto said as he lifted his head. I don't want to do this twice. Shizune heard his seriousness and obliged him. Naruto looked at Tamamo and Yasaka, who was being burped. Naru, what is going on? Tamamo asked worriedly as she finished burping her child. I will explain when they arrive. Naruto said as he leaned in and pressed his cheek against Tamamo's cheek. They purred and Tamamo's tails wrapped around the two of them with Yasaka being safe. 10 minutes passed before Shizune arrives with Jiraiya and Tsunade. They sat before Naruto and Tamamo. What is this about Naruto? Tsunade asked, arms crossed. We shouldn't leave those devils alone for long. Don't worry, what I'm about to show you will only take a few seconds. Naruto said as all eyes, minus Yasaka's, were on him. Tsukiyomi. Naruto thought as he activated his Rin Sharingan, the pattern appearing in everyone's eyes. They saw the life of a child named Naruto Uzumaki, Jinchuriki of Konoha. His hardships, his passions, his loved ones, the deaths, the war, and then the final conflict between him and Sasuke. When it was finished, Naruto deactivated the technique, closing his eye, and watched as the 4 yokai panted from the rush of information they had received. Was that true? Tamamo asked her husband, tears threatening to fall. Are you really from a different dimension that uses chakra and are a reincarnation of a godson? Naruto simply nodded, waiting for them to explode on him. Silence. Jiraiya stood up and hugged Naruto. I knew you would be a great man, Jiraiya stated proudly. But I didn't know how much of one you would become. Tsunade and Shizune walked up to him and hugged Naruto too. We were destined to meet you again. Tsunade spouted through her tears. Even if I am not the same woman, I am still your grandma. Shizune said nothing as she held him. I thought they would be angry, why do I feel like a jackass? Naruto thought as he hugged them back. The mama looked at her husband when the 3 yokai let him go. You have been through so much, she stated as she leaned close, Yasaka looking at her daddy, smiling and reaching out for him. You lived that life, then came here and took the abuse of my mother, fought in another war, and are now a dad and husband. Tama. Tamamo looked at him and was crying. Please tell me you won't leave. Tamamo gasped. Don't go back there. Please stay with me. Naruto hugged Tamamo, being careful of Yasaka, and kissed her cheek. I am not leaving. Naruto stated sincerely. I haven't once thought about leaving you and Yasaka. You are my family. You are my loved ones. Tamamo cried into his shoulder, holding his arm tightly. Thank you. She repeated over and over again. Naruto hugged his wife and child close, ignoring the company of Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Shizune. Skip 2 weeks, outside Kyoto barrier. Naruto stood before Surziches, Serafal, Falbium, and Ajuka. I am proud to say you all have improved greatly. Naruto told them, getting smiles. However, that doesn't mean you are all done training. You may defeat your enemies, but there will always be one waiting after them, stronger than the last. So, keep up your training and your free time. I fucking hate you. Falbium stated bluntly. I am grateful for how much stronger I have become, but that doesn't mean I'll go easy on you if we ever become enemies. Ajuka sighed. Sorry master, he is very appreciative of all that you have taught us. Ajuka said as he apologized for Falbium's words, as the devil crossed his arms in a huff. Serafal rushed over and hugged Naruto. Will we ever get to see you again, brother? She asked weepy-eyed. Of course, Naruto said. But I cannot interact with your affairs, so when we have official business together, we will see each other then. Serafal nodded into his chest before she kissed his cheek and separated from him for Surziches. The heir of the Gremory clan walked up and simply extended his hand. Naruto looked at it and back to Surziches' eyes before taking it in his and shaking it. Thank you for everything. Surziches said. We won't forget any of this. You're welcome, however, Naruto stated. Don't tell anyone I trained you guys. Just say you guys figured these things out for yourself. We can't do that. Serafal said shocked. I would feel horrible taking the credit you deserve. Naruto shook his head. I don't care for glory as much as people like to think you guys. Naruto told them. If people think you made yourselves stronger with your own methods, then it will make you sound stronger. I don't want to be remembered in history. Serafal was about to protest, but her mouth was covered by Falbium and Ajuka. Alright, we won't. Ajuka said sadly. I really wanted to tell my family about this though. Fine, but allow us to owe you a favor down the line. Surziches stated sternly, looking Naruto in the eye with confidence. Alright, you guys can owe me a favor. Naruto said in a defeated tone. Falbium was silent as they activated their teleporting seal. See you all later. Naruto stated as he waved at them, getting waves from all of them but Falbium, who flipped Naruto off. Naruto laughed as he watched them leave. He lowered his hand and put it in his pockets. It will be a little lonely now that they are gone. Naruto thought as he walked back to the capital, enjoying nature. What if they come back and attack Kyoto? Naruto? Gyuki asked curiously. Isn't it obvious? We will kill them. Shukaku laughed darkly. No, we won't. Naruto thought as he jumped into the trees. We aren't animals, despite having animal traits, so if they attack, we will capture them alive and figure out why they attacked us, then decide what to do from there. Shukaku huffed angrily. You're too nice, you know that. He said before going back to sleep. I know. Naruto smiled as he made it to a cliff near the capital. He took in the side of his home and put his hands before his eyes, making a rectangle with his index fingers and thumbs. It's small enough to fit in my hand. Naruto thought as he looked at Kyoto. But soon, I hope we can expand further. Naruto jumped and felt the air push against his body as he picked up speed. He grabbed a strong tree branch and swung around a few times before letting go, landing in a nearby tree and continuing his tree hopping. Naruto made it home within the hour, seeing his wife and daughter in the living room. Yusaka garbled as she reached for him, a toothless smile present on her chubby face. How have you been, Yusaka? Naruto asked with a smile as he picked up his daughter and kissed her cheek before holding her high above his head, making her laugh. She has been doing good. Tamamo said as she stood up and kissed Naruto. She had plenty to eat today so she should be satisfied for a while, so you can continue your little side projects. Naruto smiled as he held Yusaka to his chest and kissed Tamamo's lips. Thank you, Tamamo. He said as he walked to his office with Yusaka, his turn to watch her to give Yusaka some time to relax. Naruto entered his large office, which had a small crib, a playpen, and some toys for Yusaka in it, and created a clone and put Yusaka in the playpen. Don't worry, boss, I'll keep an eye on her. The clone said as he sat down next to the playpen, while Yusaka's tiny tail swayed as she pounced on her teddy bear. Naruto and his clone smiled before he got to work and opened the doors that lead to his office balcony. He sat down on the deck with some sealing tools he got from Jiraiya and activated his Rin Sharingan. Creation of all things. He put his hands out and in between them, metal formed out of his chakra. But the knowledge he obtained from the tailed beasts, especially Asobu, Seiken, Gyuki, and Kurama, Naruto remade the treasure tools of the Sage of Six Paths and the 7 ninja swords of the Hidden Mist. Alright, that is all of them. Naruto thought as he checked them over, Samahata enjoying his chakra. He looked at the executioner's blade, nostalgia filling his mind and heart with memories of Haku and Zabuza. I'll make this blade stronger than it ever was in my world. Naruto thought as he grabbed a carving tool and small hammer. This blade was exactly the same as the original, meaning it could not be chipped or broken, as it could fix itself using the iron from the enemy's blood. Naruto infused the chisel with his chakra and carved into the blunt end of the blade runes and seals that could never be removed, so if the blade reformed, the runes and seals would return as well. Alright, let's test this out. Naruto thought as he put his tools away, grabbing the sword. Naruto swung it a few times, getting an idea for the balance, as Asobu and Seiken had a few users who were members of the swordsmen. That feels about right. Asobu chimed in. Seiken agreed with his brother. Okay, now to try out the seals. Naruto thought as he activated it with his will as he stood still, entering sage mode. The seals glowed faintly, and Naruto smiled as he felt the effects. Nature energy started to be pulled into the blade, and as a master of Senjutsu, Naruto could see it flowing within the metal. Perfect, Naruto thought as he swung it and could feel how much stronger the blade was. I am not going to do this with all of them, just this one, as Zabuza was very proud of it. He deactivated the seals, stopping the pull of nature energy, and swung it, sending the energy out of it, just like Naruto wanted. Pride swelled in Naruto as he walked back to the other creations and decided to put them away. Hey, Naruto, make a sand gourd with a sand seal so you can use my powers. Shukaku snipped. Oh yeah, that would be a good idea. Naruto thought as he did just that. I need to train in the Rinnegan's powers and all of your abilities, you guys. It looked just like Gaara's gourd, but it was about a foot long, 5 inches wide at the bottom, and could be carried at his hip on his belt. Inside was a special seal that could hold all the necessary sand Naruto and Shukaku would need. Naruto sealed the swords and treasure tools away in 2 separate scrolls, only going to allow them to be used during times of need. He returned to the inside of his office and picked Yusaka up, his nose assaulted by a foul odor. Okay, yeah, this is something I don't want to get used to. Naruto thought as he handed Yusaka over to the clone to change her. He's still experienced, though it was second-hand thanks to the Shadow Clone Jutsu's special ability. Thankfully, he didn't need to get used to it as he had help from Shizune and Tsunade, who looked after Yusaka the most, while Naruto and Tamamo lead Kyoto into a time of peace. Naruto had heard a few months after the devils left Kyoto that the Devil Civil War ended with the victors being the anti-Satan side, which had his students. Naruto was proud of them, even more so when he got an invitation to the coronation of them as the new Saiyans. Sadly, he did not attend, as it was a time of rebuilding in the underworld and having anyone that they could possibly deem an enemy would not be a good idea, but he did send them gifts. Years passed and Sun Wukong and Luko would show up from time to drink and celebrate birthdays or to just hang out. However, with the good, bad always stalks its shadows. Naruto and Tamamo noticed that dozens of yokai had been leaving Kyoto and it concerned them dearly. As king partial leader, Naruto had explained the will of fire to Tamamo and she did her best to embody that philosophy passed down through Konoha. Though she might not be a native to Naruto's world, the will of fire burned brightly within her as she saw all who lived in Kyoto family. It happened when Yusaka was 7, meaning Naruto was 24 and Tamamo was 23. Civil war broke out between yokai and Kyoto. This was short-lived as when the war hit over 1,000 casualties on Naruto's and Tamamo's side, Naruto stepped in and was not very shocked when he felt the negative emotions all focused on him with Kurama's negative emotion sensing. So, this is what it is about. Naruto thought as he stood alone before an army of angered yokai. It's racism. Prejudice because I'm human. In the front, leading this anger-fueled army was old Baba. Her hunched-over form clear as day to Naruto. Baba, why? Why are you doing this? Naruto asked, not wanting to fight them. Because, she said angrily. Your people took my family from me. What happened wasn't directly tied to me. Naruto shouted confused. Baba ignored him and signaled her followers to attack. Naruto shed one tear. Fine, he muttered in defeat. Have it your way. He entered Sage mode, activated his Byakugan, and found out that there were over 3,000 yokai against him, how strong they were, and got an idea for the terrain. Shukaku. Naruto thought as the small cork on the gourd and sand funneled out endlessly as Naruto and Shukaku prepared their attack. Sand tsunami. Naruto and Shukaku said together as the yokai saw a large tidal wave of sand raise above them and crash into the front lines and rolled over to the rest. Naruto watched as many yokai died, while about 15% of them survived. One of them was Baba. She was injured, barely alive when he felt her signature. Walking up to her, Naruto watched her face and emotions. Anger and fear blended perfectly on her face. Damn you. She gasped. Filthy human corrupting our leader's blood purity with your disgusting blood. Naruto said and thought nothing before he made the sand cover Baba, fear and anger, fueling her even more as she tried to struggle, but soon she was silenced. Her blood was disgusting. Shukaku stated, as it was his sand, he could taste what was in it. Naruto was silent as he recalled the sand. Gather all the bodies of the deceased and take the survivors back to Kyoto to be healed. Naruto ordered his men as he walked away, needing to go back to his wife. They were shocked as Naruto made that order. He wants the traitors us healed. They thought. Naruto returned home on foot. Daddy. Yusaka called out, her two tails swaying as she ran at her father and hugged his waist. Naruto did not react. Naruto Tamamo asked as she realized the 1,000-yard stare in his eyes. Yusaka, do you want to spend time with Grandma Tsunade and Aunt Shizune? Yusaka's eyes widened and she nodded. Tamamo summoned a servant and they took Yusaka to Tsunade's home, leaving Tamamo alone with Naruto. Naruto pulled Tamamo into him and kissed her, deeply. Tamamo did not need help with Kurama's power to know Naruto was sad and troubled. Pulling back a bit, Tamamo loosened and then dropped her kimono and took Naruto's hand, leading him to their room. Tamamo's screams and moans echoed through the compound as they had one-sided emotional effects. After a few hours, Tamamo gasped for air as she collapsed on top of Naruto, their sweat mixing. Feeling better? She huffed as she caressed his face. Yes, much better. Naruto responded as he touched her hand. Tamamo hummed as her tail swayed slowly as she cuddled with him. I love you. She said as she fell asleep. I love you too, Tamamo. Naruto said as he relaxed and fell asleep next to his wife. Skip, 8 years. Yusaka, now age 15, woke up, tired. It's morning already. She thought weakly as she wiped her eyes of sleep and then stretched. She looked just like her mom. Differences though, where she grew her hair out and was more developed. Where Tamamo was a solid BB cup, Yusaka was a D cup. Yusaka had stayed up late, against her father's wishes, training. Her 4 tails, all bushy and soft like her mother's fur, swayed silently as Yusaka jumped off the bed, landing on her feet gracefully, and grabbed her bathing supplies before her way to the bath. You alright, Tama? Yusaka heard when she prepared for her soak. I'm fine, Naru. Yusaka smiled as she opened the door and saw her parents look up at her. Tamamo's stomach had been rounded out again, being pregnant again for the last 5 months. Yo, you having a good morning? Naruto asked his daughter as he scrubbed his wife's back. Yep, I am having a very good morning so far, Papa. Yusaka answered as she made her way over and sat next to Tamamo, pressing her face against Tamamo's wet and rounded belly. My baby brother doing fine in there, mama. Tamamo giggled. Your dad did the same thing when he came back the day you were born. Tamamo stated as she tried not to laugh. Haha, very funny. Naruto stated as he started scrubbing his daughter's back after pouring water on her. Yusaka and Tamamo laughed. The family of 3, soon to be 4, enjoyed their bath together, like they always did. Soon, Naruto helped Tamamo out and the two left the bath for their room and Yusaka went to hers to get dressed. She put on another kimono, like usual. Purple with silver lining today, with gold swirls. At her hip was a sand gourd. Appa worries over nothing. She thought as she tapped the gourd. She put her long hair up, revealing on her soft neck to the world, and soon Yusaka left her room for breakfast. Seriously, you can't leave the house without the gourd is a bit much. Yusaka thought. She remembered why Naruto was so persistent for her taking the gourd everywhere. When she was 11 years old, Naruto took Yusaka outside the Kyoto borders and into the human world. While Naruto wasn't looking, Yusaka wandered off and got lost. Naruto was in a crowd of people and was too panicked to think clearly and use his genjutsu to cover his eyes to use his Byakugan. When he found Yusaka, she was being held up by some adult men and had cuts all over her body. Naruto had destroyed them. Leaving them alive for the police, Naruto took Yusaka back home via portal and Tsunade healed her, thus no scars were present on her body. The next day however, Naruto gave her the gourd and a small amount of chakra, which she did and still doesn't understand why, but after that, when she wore the gourd at her side, any and all attacks were blocked by a barrier of sand automatically without her willing it to. It's a cool power, though I wish I could use it for offense. Yusaka thought as she entered the dining room and sat across her dad, but next to her mother who sat at the head of the table. Yusaka smiled as she saw her breakfast and the family ate together once more, like they always did before Yusaka went to school. Upon her return, Yusaka and Naruto were told some bad news from Tsunade, who was over checking on the baby and Tamamo. Tamamo has a high chance of dying. Tsunade said as she looked out the window. She is poisoned and I can't cure it with her being pregnant. What caused her to get poisoned? Naruto asked, his eyes filled with worry. According to my last checkup, Tsunade said as she held out Tamamo's medical folder to Naruto. It's chakra poisoning. Chakra poisoning? Yusaka asked, confused and worried. Yes. Tsunade answered as she sat down, her heart weighing heavy. The chakra from the baby is abnormally large and is affecting Tamamo. Anything that can cause a lot of stress will force the chakra through the heart and too much will cause the heart to burst. So, if the baby is born, Tamamo is more or less going to die. Naruto stiffened. What have I done? He thought as he read the file. Nothing. That is what you have done. Madatabi told him, worried. This abundance of chakra in the fetus may have been an accidental cause on our part. Naruto grit his teeth. Damn it. He thought. Is it possible to siphon off the harmful chakra from the baby without killing him and mama? Yusaka asked in desperation. She did not want to lose either her mother or baby brother. Tsunade shook her head. Medical magic has not been researched enough in that field. Tsunade replied. It is very dangerous to do, as a volunteer would have to be a pregnant mother. It is inhumane. But we are yokai. Yusaka yelled, tears starting to fill her eyes. Being inhumane is an acceptable thing we can do, right, Papa? Naruto stood up, his face eerily silent and stern-faced. Appa? Yusaka asked meekly as she watched him walk away to go to Tamamo. He opened his bedroom door and saw his wife, sleeping peacefully. Naruto Kurama asked. What is going through your head? You have blocked us out. Naruto said nothing as he knelt near his wife, caressing her short blonde hair that was on her cheek. Naruto. Activating his Rin Sharingan, Naruto touched Tamamo's stomach. Pre-top path. Gakido. Naruto thought as a small spherical barrier enveloped him and Tamamo, his hands starting to absorb the abundant chakra from his unborn child into his hand. Naruto, stop. Naruto, stop. Naruto pulled his hand back, ending his ability, closing his eye, and looked at Tamamo, still sleeping soundly. Hearing his heartbeat in his ears, Naruto activated his Byakugan and looked at the baby. The once abnormally large chakra reserves in the infant was now thinned out to what it should have been. There was no strain on Tamamo's or the baby's chakra coils. Naruto sighed and collapsed into a nearby chair as he deactivated his Byakugan. Oh, shit, that was stressful. Naruto thought as he looked at his slumbering pregnant wife. At least the problem is gone now. Within him, all the tailed beasts were somberly solemn. Kurama, should we tell him what we found out? Isobu asked timidly. Kurama grit his teeth. I don't know. He replied. It's going to hurt either way, but knowing now would make him desperately drastic. So, we should keep it to ourselves. Madatabi asked, not wanting to see anything that was now set in motion happen. He deserves to know. Kurama's hands clenched as he glared at his siblings. I know. But Naruto has more than himself to look after. Kurama stated as his hands shook, showing he wasn't happy either. Him freaking out won't help. It will make the situation worse, especially Tamamo. The tailed beasts fell silent and cried. It was painful for them knowing that everything was going to change once again. 3 months, 2 weeks, 4 days later. Tamamo was once again in child labor-filled agony, but unlike before, Naruto wasn't there. She remembered the night before, Naruto had been called away to settle a dispute that she would normally handle, but since she was on leave, Naruto took it up. I. Tamamo screamed as she felt another wave of pain blitz its way through her body. Naruto. Tsunade and Shizune were working as best they could to help Tamamo's current situation, as she was still preparing for birthing her son. It's going to be fine, Tamamo, Tsunade stated as she scanned Tamamo's body. You have another 3 centimeters to go before you can push. Tamamo barely nodded. Her body was hot, covered in sweat, and hurt everywhere, most painful in her stomach. Her heavy-lidded eyes had heavy bags under them from being in labor for 3 hours. Where are you, Naruto? Shizune thought worriedly as she applied numbing chakra into Tamamo's body. Kyoto border. Naruto waved goodbye to the guards. There had been a small tear in the barrier protecting Kyoto, and Naruto fixed it. I am exhausted. He thought as he activated a portal. I am going to take a nap when I get home. He passed through it and heard his name get shouted in a blood-curdling scream. Naruto felt Tamamo's chakra, his eyes widening when he felt it getting weaker at a quick rate. Running through the compound, Naruto entered as Tamamo started to push. Tamamo tiredly and painfully looked over and saw him there. She weakly held her hand out, trying to reach him, eyes filled with want to hold his hand. Naruto, get out of here. Tsunade shouted, actually relieved he was there, but at this stage in these conditions, distracting Tamamo was not a good option. Naruto was about to argue, but was pulled out by Jiraiya, his newest set of legs strong enough to overpower Naruto's attempts to stand his ground. In the room nearby, Naruto was set down, he saw Yasaka, her eyes filled with worry and tears, her hands over her ears, having sensitive hearing, and she lunged at him, hugging him tightly as she shook. Papa, she hiccuped. Where were you? I was working, but I'm here now. Naruto replied as he put his arms around Yasaka and pet her head, doing what he could to soothe her. Jiraiya watched Naruto and his goddaughter interact in silence. The 3 of them listened for over 2 more hours of Tamamo's cries of pain echo through the compound as they waited anxiously. All that time, Naruto was in sage mode, focusing on the chakra signatures in that one room, everything else around him irrelevant. His eyes widened before he ran out of the room suddenly. While Yasaka said before her eyes widened too, and she took off with Jiraiya. Jiraiya entered the room, not being able to move fast anymore, and saw what they were in a hurry for. Naruto and Yasaka were holding Tamamo's hands, trying to channel chakra into Tamamo. Her body was now emaciated, her bones showing through her skin as she clung to life. Her face had a weak smile that was taking a lot of effort to keep. Jiraiya looked over at Tsunade and Shizune, where the baby should have been, but all Jiraiya saw was a silent infant covered in a blanket, soaking wet with 4 large bushy tails. As it wasn't, Jiraiya dumbly tried to ask. Dead? Tsunade answered as she looked up at him, her face racked with all emotions tied to sadness. He wasn't breathing, and being born with tails it should not have been possible. Mama? Yasaka shouted desperately, getting the other 3 Yokkai's attention. Please don't die. Naruto had desperation and despair on his face as he looked over Tamamo's chakra coils with his Byakugan. I don't understand, her chakra coils are completely ruined. How did this happen? He thought as he continued to try to replenish Tamamo's chakra coils with his and Yasaka's. Her body was now filling out, no longer emaciated. I am so, Tamamo gasped out weakly. Yasaka and Naruto felt intense weight building in their chests as they heard this. Sore. Right, Tamamo whispered before her chakra coils, what was left of them, were empty. Yasaka and Naruto's faces scrunched up in pain, tears swelled and fell. Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Shizune felt the chakra of the father and daughter erupt, sporadically and violently lash everywhere, knocking everything over and shaking Kyoto, making an earthquake. The mother and son had left the father and daughter alone. 2 days later. Tamamo and her son, whom was going to be named Minato, were lowered into the earth next to her mother. She was positioned in a peaceful slumbering position, her arms holding her baby, who had sun-kissed blonde hair and tails. All the citizens of Kyoto were there, with friends and family the closest. All wore black clothing as they attended the funeral, all placing a flower at the small shrine with a picture of Tamamo. Luko and Wukong were there, dressed in black, and were crying with everyone else as they saw their friend and her son get placed in the grave. Once placed, Naruto stepped up and used his chakra to bury his wife and son completely. He wasn't crying, his face held in solemn. After covering their former leader, the citizens dispersed to mourn the loss in their homes, all businesses closed for the next few days to collect themselves. Lukoa, Wukong, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Shizune stayed behind in the graveyard with Naruto and Yusaka, who was crying heavily on her knees before the grave Shukaku and Naruto made the day before and put over to Momo. An hour had passed and Yusaka had barely made any progress in her mourning. "Yusaka," Naruto stated calmly as he knelt next to his daughter. "Let's go home." He touched her shoulder with his hand and felt pain shoot through his arm when she clawed him and moved away. Her eyes filled with anger and sadness as she angrily looked at Naruto. "This is your fault." She shouted angrily as she lunged at Naruto and punched him hard and continued to do so while Naruto did nothing to stop her. "If only you hadn't gotten her pregnant, she would still be alive." No response. Isaka's anger skyrocketed and she channeled chakra into her hand, rotated it and formed a spiraling sphere. "Rasengan," she shouted as she thrust the jutsu at her dad. Sand burst from Yusaka's gourd and surrounded Naruto in a dome, taking the attack head-on and wearing the jutsu down to the point it ended. "Howard," Yusaka shouted as she prepared 6 Rasengan, 1 for each hand and tail. "Yusaka," Lukoa shouted as she grabbed the kitsune and forced her to the ground as the sand returned to the gourd, showing an unscathed Naruto. "Calm down right now. Your father is hurting just as much as you are." "As he should be," Yusaka shouted as she struggled against Luko's grip. "It's all his fault. Mama and Minato would have lived if he hadn't messed with them." Yusaka thrashed more, and the more she did the more tired she became, soon just staying still as she cried. Naruto watched his daughter break down, taking all that she said and thought about it, not showing any emotion on his face, body language, or eyes. "Naruto, you okay?" Wukong asked worriedly as he walked up to his friend. Naruto created a portal with his Rin Sharingan. "I'll be back before dinner," he said emotionlessly. "You and Lukoa can stay the night." He entered the portal. "Run away like you always do," Yusaka shouted as the portal closed behind her dad. Lukoa got off of Yusaka, who shot up and ran home. Wukong and Lukoa turned, feeling Naruto's chakra at the Valley of the Lovers. "We will go talk to him," Lukoa said as rainbow-colored wings appear from her back and Wukong gathered clouds under his feet. "No, leave him be," Tsunade ordered. "He needs to let out some steam." "But what if he does something stupid?" Wukong asked. "He could go and kill himself." "He wouldn't do that," Jiraiya stated. "He would never want to hurt Yusaka like that." Lukoa wanted to argue, but recalled her wings. "He is an adult too," she thought. Lukoa was 1,000+ years old, so to her, Naruto at age 34 was still an infant. But in this situation, he probably did not want to be babied. "When he is ready to talk, he will come to us," Tsunade reassured them. Wukong and Lukoa nodded. "Let's go find Yusaka," Shizune told Tsunade and Jiraiya. The earth shook and confused everyone, wondering what was happening before the shakes ended. "Naruto." He was taking deep breaths as he looked up at the waterfalls while in kurama mode. Large chunks of rock around him. He had destroyed the statues he made 15 years prior, regretting it now. Around him was the 6 red yang formation barrier surrounding him and the valley, so he would not destroy more than he wanted. "Damn it," Naruto shouted as he exited 6 paths mode, ending kurama mode. Why did this have to happen? The tailed beast stayed silent, getting Naruto's attention, which they could feel as he entered the mindscape. "Alright, out with it," Naruto shouted. "What do you guys know that I don't?" Kurama held his arm out, silencing the other 8. "Naruto, do not be mad at them," Kurama stated. "But I was the one who decided to withhold the information you want." Naruto's anger spiked, but he stayed silent. "Your son's excess amount of chakra was due to us. He had a sliver of our chakra and was rapidly growing," Kurama explained. "We noticed it when Tamamo hit 3 months, but when you decided to siphon chakra from the baby, we said to stop. The chakra you took from him was connected to Tamamo's, thus you took her chakra too. And by taking his chakra, your son's chakra got stronger, thus he was born with 4 tails, which in turn killed Tamamo." Naruto's hair covered his eyes as he shook with rage. He angrily glared at Kurama, Rin Sharingan activated, startling Kurama before he was pinned down by the red gates. You fucking knew this was going to happen," Naruto stated angrily as he walked to his friend. "You knew, yet you didn't bother to tell me." "Naruto." Naruto swung his hand towards the other tailed beasts. "Shinra Tensei." The 8-tailed beasts were pushed back by the immense gravitational force forced them away from Naruto and Kurama. He took deep breaths as he turned to face Kurama, who was relaxed, eyes showing empathy and sympathy. Naruto got on top of Kurama's muzzle and in front of his one eye. "You had no right to keep this from me," Naruto stated, grabbing Kurama's eyelid tightly and pulling it. If you told me, I would have saved them both from dying. That may be true, but at what cost? Kurama stated, wincing slightly. You would have been seen as a madman, hurting Tamamo worse than what was going to be done. She knew what was going to happen deep down, so why don't you just get a grip and accept you can't save everyone? Naruto snarled and pulled his other hand back, a Rasen shuriken in his hand. He deactivated the jutsu and carefully placed Kurama's eyelid back and removed the gates off of the fox as the other beasts returned. I'm sorry, Naruto said in shame. Please forgive me, my friends. He bowed, touching his head to the watery floor. The tailed beasts, while chakra beings, were not animals. They were intelligent beings like any other. We forgive you, Naruto. They stated sincerely. Naruto sadly smiled and looked at them. Thank you. Nighttime, compound. Naruto entered his office with his Rin Sharingan portal. He went to his closet, pulling out the scrolls where the treasure tools and the 7 swords were kept. I should leave these with them, in case they need them. He thought as he put them back. He hesitated a second before he pulled the swords back out and unsealed the executioner's blade. I'll take this one though. Naruto placed the scroll back in the closet before he sat down at his desk, pulled out an ink brush and parchment, and started writing something down. Are you sure about this? Son Goku asked. This is a very impactful decision, Naruto. I know, but I am something that brings misfortune to his loved ones. Naruto thought. He continued writing. So, I will do what is necessary. Several minutes later Naruto finished his writing and summoned a clone, handing it to the clone, who nodded and took his place at his desk when Naruto stood up. He sealed the executioner's blade in a sealing scroll, taking a few things from his office, like his sealing kit, some documents, and personal possessions. Naruto left his office, leaving the clone with the letter, silently weaving through the compound, going to his room, taking some more things for what he was planning before he exited the room and walked to Yasaka's room. He entered quietly, seeing her sleeping form on her futon, shivering from having kicked the blanket off in her sleep. Naruto picked the blanket up and gently placed it back on his daughter, who stopped shivering after a few seconds. He placed his hand in her hair, making her purr as he petted her. I love you, Yasaka. Naruto whispered, making her ears twitch as he spoke. I am sorry. He removed his hand from her head, making her pout in her sleep before leaving her room and walking to the front door. As Naruto walked through the hallway, he stopped and looked at a few portraits. The first being a recent one. Naruto, pregnant Tamamo, and Yasaka. The second being of Naruto and Yasaka with an infant Yasaka. And the third being of Naruto and Tamamo as children being held in Maiko's lap, all three smiling happily. The pit of emotions burrowed into Naruto's stomach and heart as he looked at these three. I guess I'll take these too. Naruto said to no one as he sealed the 3 large portraits away. He walked out of the compound and turned one last time to look at his home. His heart weighed heavy, his pulse drumming in his ear, he felt dizzy thinking about what he was about to do. Goodbye. Next morning. Yasaka woke up. Appa, she thought as she remembered yesterday. A great weight pushed itself into chest as the guilt set in. I should apologize to him at breakfast. She showered and dressed, not seeing her dad anywhere. Where is he? Yasaka thought as she walked through the compound. Maybe he is in his office. Yasaka made her way to Naruto's office, running into Lukoa. Yasaka, said Kitsune, turned and saw Lukoa, holding a tray of food. Auntie, what are you doing? Yasaka asked, noticing the food. And what is with the food? It's for Naruto. Lukoa answered. He hasn't left his office, so I thought I would make him something to eat. Yasaka raised an eyebrow at the very faint rose tint in Lukoa's cheeks. Well, I'm going to go talk to him. Yasaka said rudely as she walked ahead of Lukoa. Upon arriving, Yasaka knocked on the door. Appa, are you in there? She asked nervously. Come in. Yasaka and Lukoa entered and saw Naruto sitting at the desk, a letter in his hands with Yasaka's name on it. Appa, I want to, Yasaka started to say before she was looking at the letter being held in front of her face. She took it, confused, and looked at it and then back to her father. Lukoa? Yes. Naruto looked at his friend teammate. Please, help Yasaka. He asked with a deep bow. As from this day forth, Yasaka is the leader of Kyoto. Yasaka's and Lukoa's eyes widened in shock. Appa, that is what? Naruto looked up and was about to answer, but sadly smiled before he placed his hand on her head, rubbing between her ears. Always remember, I love you, Yasaka. He said before he popped out of existence. Lukoa dropped her tray as she realized what had just happened. Naruto had abandoned his post as leader, passing it to his daughter, and asked her, Lukoa, to help Yasaka lead Kyoto. Yasaka collapsed to her knees. Appa, she asked timidly as her ears flattened on her head, shaking as she held the letter to her chest. Please tell me this is just a joke. Sweetie, Lukoa said as she knelt next to her niece and pulled her into a hug. Yasaka made no move to get out of the hug as she started to cry, her guilt increasing. It's all my fault, she hiccuped. If I hadn't been so mean, Papa would still be here. It's going to be alright, sweetie, I promise you it will. Lukoa said as she rocked the crying teen. This was the scene Jiraiya, Tsunade, Shizune, and Wukong walked in on. Skip, 4 years, England. Please train me. A young woman covered in bruises and slash marks asked Naruto, bowing. She was very beautiful, long light brown hair, and on her left hand was the boosted gear made from the red dragon drag, which Naruto remembered from the faction war and being the reason why the Yokai faction got involved. I just kicked your ass and now you are begging me to teach you? Naruto asked her as he sat down, the executioner's blade at his side. Yes, you are strong, and I want to be the best emperor of the boosted gear. She said as she looked up, determination and resolve in her eyes. What's your name? Naruto asked. Elsha. This might bite me in the ass. Naruto thought, getting agreements from the tailed beasts. Skip, 79 years, 1864, America. With her training under Naruto, Elsha had accomplished her dream of becoming the strongest female Red Dragon Emperor. Sadly, she died at a young age of 33 when defending against a legion of monsters after her training was complete. Naruto had heard of this and returned to England and paid his respects to her, praying she would rest peacefully. Currently, he was sitting at a small campfire cooking fish, ignoring the massive civil war the Americans were having. Why, Naruto thought as he ate his fish. It has been 83 years since I left Kyoto, and I haven't died. He had not aged a day over 34 years old in the past 80+ years. During that time, he had helped many people, monster yokai to humans in need. He did perform miracles, as he wasn't Jesus, but used his powers in small ways to ease the living of others. Plowing fields for a place to sleep, herding animals, defending castles, anything under the sun Naruto did as a job. He had arrived recently in America a week prior, having finished helping some sailors deal with the kraken, which Naruto tamed and asked to move to a more secluded area so it wouldn't be bothered or bother others. Currently, Naruto was wandering around, helping slaves escape to Canada. It was easy, using his genjutsu on them to make them look white, he was able to pass as an escort to Canada, and since humans in this day and age did not believe in magic that much, he could get away with it easily. Nearby was a few dead Confederate and Union soldiers with their loaded guns. Why the funk haven't I died yet? Naruto thought as his hope after leaving Kyoto was to wander around, helping as many people he could, grow old, and die. There is a reason for that, Naruto. Chimei answered from within him. Naruto raised an eyebrow while he chewed his fish. When you ate the fruit that returned your memories, granted you your powers, and returned us to you, your body became like ours. Kakuo stated. Meaning you are a chakra being like us. Goku stated. Naruto's eyes widened as he realized what that meant. I can't die of age. He stated dejectedly. No, you cannot. Jayuki responded. Naruto was silent as he stood up. Naruto, it won't work. Shukaku stated. We won't know until we try. Naruto stated. He walked over to the dead bodies and took one of the Confederate muskets, loaded. Picking up a 20-pound gun, Naruto placed the barrel against his temple. See you all on the other side. He said to the beasts. It isn't going to work. They all said in unison. Only one way to find out. Naruto replied as he pulled the trigger. Bang. His body collapsed, his brain having a metal ball lodge itself into it. So this part ends here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, so quickly like this video for second part of this series. And comment down below your thoughts about this series. And now it's time for me to go, bye.